Hi, friends. It's Kayla Moran, and welcome back to the Let's Get Candid podcast. How is everybody doing today? Happy Thursday. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever day or time it is that you're listening. So happy to be back on the mic with you guys. I hope everyone is having a good week so far. I know this week tends to be a little bit harder for a lot of people with 9/11 and especially with the debate this week. So just want to make a note and give everyone a gentle reminder to be kind to yourself and kind to others this week. You never know what people are going through, what people are struggling with. It's also World Suicide Prevention Month, and World Suicide Prevention Day was earlier this week as well. And I feel like there's just a lot going on in the world and in the universe, like in the planets. And I think we're all a little bit collectively gasping for air and struggling right now. I know personally I am. And I've been debating what I want to talk about in this intro because I don't want it to be a heavy topic. I want this to be a fun, lighthearted episode, even though we are talking about some big things. But there's just been so much to talk about. And I feel like where else can I discuss that than on here? This is a safe space. This is my safe space. This is also an episode that goes a lot more vulnerable than I have been in a while, and it's something that I've been scared to talk about, and I didn't know who I could talk to about this. It's something I'm still struggling with. I actually was crying on the phone with my dad 5 minutes ago, talking about this shift that I'm feeling internally, that I want a softer life, that I want to be more feminine. I want to, not feel the pressure to have it all figured out and have it all together and to know the right answer and to be right and to be on all the time. That's something that I've been really working on, just healing myself, doing the work on myself, going back to therapy. And I'm in a pause right now to integrate all the things I've been learning and allow myself some time to get a break, because there was a lot of revelations in a very quick period of time. But I'm feeling the need to go back already. And, I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to pause it and start it whenever I can, whenever I need to. But this shift has really taken me by surprise. And I didn't know, like I said, who I could talk to about this. And then I met my friend Lauren, and she talks about this. She has built a platform and a brand, Quietly Becoming, talking about how to live a feminine life with a high earning, very masculine partner, and how to be a softer version of yourself and attract that and maintain that and have a long, healthy relationship with someone that is very much your opposite, and still not lose yourself in the process. And that's something that I've always struggled with, how to have a strong identity of my own, but still be in a relationship, because I do want to be a wife and I do want to be a mom. And, I want to be supported and I want to be provided for and I want a partner. But how do I reconcile that with my need to provide for myself and, ensure that no one can take the floor away from me, underneath my feet, and and feeling like I have a safety net, that I won't be left in the dust. And obviously education is very important to me for that reason. It's always been very important to my parents for that, giving me the tools to, not need somebody, but want someone, and to allow me to protect myself and set myself up for success. They want me to be successful. I want to be successful. But what does success mean? And so I wrote an entire blog post last week. It went live on my law school's blog. I'll link it below, on redefining success and what that means to us and how it's okay for that definition to change. And, with the debate, there's a lot of conversation, like big issues that we need to talk about and decide, like, where do we stand? What is important to us, and vote accordingly, and do our research to make sure that we're voting accordingly to what we want, but also what's best for our futures, our individual futures, and then collectively as well. And how to reconcile that with the way you were raised, or religion, or, your education, your employer. Like there's a lot of things to consider. And, you know, I just feel like there's just it's a time of a lot of hard conversations. And I think September tends to be that for me almost every year. I don't know if it's back to school, like, summer's over, it's time to get serious kind of vibes, or, there's an election every 2 years. So maybe because of that, and like this is when it starts to ramp up, or just like the season change. I don't know what it is, but I feel like September every year is just where I really take a step back to dive deep and, think about myself and, go back to my roots and go back to my inner child and who I am and what I want, what I'm looking for, and checking myself, against that and seeing like, is this working? Is this going to get me where I want to go? And maybe it's because it's the end of Q3 and there's only a few months left of the year. And, it's time to check in with the vision board and the manifestation and the goals and the intentions and see the progress that you've made, or, reevaluate. Do you want to set different goals, or are you going to stay on the goals that you've already made? I was thinking about that earlier today. Like, I think it's time to set some new goals. Things have changed a lot since I've made those. And in January, and then reevaluated them in March. I feel like so much has happened in the last 7 months. All this to say, there's been a lot going on in my brain. And I think that's a part of why, after a lovely weekend away in Toronto, I got sick. I also had actually the worst period I've had in a really long time. Funny that we're talking about that when I had a whole episode about periods and endometriosis and self-advocacy last week. But I felt really ill over the weekend with my period while I was in Toronto, and it really, impacted obviously my trip and my family because they were around me and they had to take care of me, and I feel really bad about it. But also just knowing that that's just human nature and that's just life as a woman sometimes. But also, wanting to make sure that everything is okay and having conversations with my friends who are also struggling with, their bodies and cycles and things like that. And I'm glad that a lot more of us are talking about it. But, you know, I think part of that is why I got sick, is just feeling so overwhelmed, so stressed out, hence why I needed the trip and going out of office. But then feeling physically ill, it manifested in when I got home, even though I had felt fine the last 2 days of the trip. I woke up on Monday morning just really ill, and I haven't recovered. 2 days later, I have a pounding headache right now. I'm really stuffy, but I'm trying really hard to record for you guys because I didn't want to let you go without an episode, because I'm really excited about this episode, although I'm really, really nervous for it because it's so unlike me. But it's a version of me that I want to be more of. And if you've been following me for a while, you might have noticed in the last few months that I've been trending in this direction. A softer life, a more feminine life, if you will. My style is evolving too, just the way I dress, the way I want to present myself. I want to shed this armor of needing to have it all figured out and needing to be the provider, needing to be the breadwinner. I want to allow someone to provide for me. I want to be cared for. I want to be loved, and I want to feel safe, and I want to feel soft, and I want to feel wanted. And these are my affirmations every morning to myself, but I actually have to allow someone in now to do that. And I had to do a lot of work on myself in the last few months to get to that point. And that's why this conversation came at a really good time. With Lauren, we recorded in May. I believe it was May, when we had an opportunity to have this conversation. And, I was right at the crux of all of this. And even more so in the last 3-4 months, have I really expanded on this. And I want to continue to have these conversations more and more. And it's conversations I'm having with my friends and with my family and relationships and people in my life. And I love that I have a safe place here to have this conversation. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you my friend Lauren Hunter. She is a model, an entrepreneur, and a relationship coach. And her whole thing is talking about, like I said, how to quietly become the softest, most feminine version of you and still attract and maintain a relationship with a high value, high earning, very masculine partner and not lose your identity in the process and how to grow together. And we had an incredible time having this conversation, but it is a difficult conversation to have. I think, at least for me, it was. And I want us to have more of these conversations, and I hope that I can have more of them in the future. I think is really important to have. So I think as we all collectively let go of hustle culture and open ourselves up to new ideas and new opportunities of living and working and being in relationships, that we all take this conversation and apply it in our own lives in whatever way we see fit for ourselves. Obviously, you know yourself best. And this is just us two talking about our own experiences. But I think it's a conversation worth having. And I'm honored that I get to share it with you all. So if you like this episode, please leave a rating and review. Please subscribe to the show, share with a friend, tags as you're listening. Let me know who you want to see next, what topics you want me to cover next. And I'll see you guys in next week's episode. Meet Lauren. What's something that people wouldn't know about you just from following you?
Based off of my Instagram, I don't think that people would have any idea that I am the adrenaline junkie that I am, that I have always dreamed of getting my skydiving license. I want to watching Sarah go to all F1 races. I want to learn how to race cars. Anything adrenaline inducing, I'm 100% always down for it. I don't feel like my Instagram really gives that energy.
Oh.
Get ready with me. Sounds your life.
Well, I just remember the first time I met you. I think this was the first time I met you. Yeah, at Max's house. You drove a Vespa over the bridge from Brickell to.
Oh yes.
In a dress, in a maxi dress, in a backless maxi dress. I was like, this girl lives on the edge.
Yeah, that's just dumb. That's just being dumb.
And you walk in and you look stunning, windswept hair, and I was like, this girl just drove a Vespa from Brickell to South Beach. Okay.
Yeah.
I love it. It's so unlike you, but also so like you at the same time.
That's when, I would say my aesthetic, and this might sound so cringy, but is literally wearing a dress, driving a motorcycle. That's me encapsulated.
No, that's actually such a perfect, that should be your bio.
Wearing a dress, driving a motorcycle. I just got pulled over. I got a written arrest for driving my Vespa because it's 300cc without a motorcycle license. So I just went and got my motorcycle license. So now I'm legal.
That's good. At least you're legal on the road.
Yeah.
I'm also an adventure junkie. I don't think people realize that. They look at me, same as you, they probably think she likes makeup, she likes fashion, she likes getting all dressed up, her hair done, facials, makeup, nails, all the things. But if we're in a foreign country and there is whitewater rafting or zip lining or canyoning, we're doing it.
You're down?
I'm just love all that stuff. I'll go on hikes. I'm not going to do a strenuous hike. I'm not going backcountry, but I'll do a 5-mile hike, to go see a waterfall for sure. I like all that stuff. I like being in nature. I like getting my hands dirty. But then I like the prim and proper.
Yeah.
I think it's a perfect description of you, that in a sundress on a motorcycle. And it goes to what we're talking about today too. And we were laughing because we've been having a whole conversation offline. But you have really built your Instagram in the last few months, since I've known you, on helping other women become more in their feminine energy because you've gone through that transformation in your own life. And I want to walk all the way back to who you were growing up. You grew up in the panhandle of Florida, very different life than Miami. What made you, was there something that happened that you were okay, I really need to work on being in my feminine energy? Or what was your introduction into masculine versus feminine energy?
Well, okay. I actually feel like I grew up very naturally in my feminine energy because I wasn't ever put in a position, even though I was the oldest daughter, I was never put in a position of having to like really take the lead. My parents never put that pressure on me of like, you're the oldest child, you have to set the example. They always very much encouraged us all in our individuality, which I feel like gave me a huge advantage. And then it also gave me the opportunity to really explore who I actually was. So growing up, I had a very good sense of my self worth. Um, in high school, I I've always been a very emotional person, and I went through a bout of severe depression where I was suicidal. I would harm myself, and then that lasted probably until I was like 20 years old. And then after that, I kind of refigured out who I was again. And throughout that time, like I wasn't like depressed every single day. I was like, you would never really know if you knew me. Like I was living barefoot on the beach and like living my best life. But I had a very, I just felt like I was always kind of, I was homeschooled, so I was always kind of like left out. I felt like that's where the depression came from. And then I like got my group of friends. I moved out to Colorado and was always very feminine, never really had an issue with being, I never knew what masculine and feminine energy was. And it wasn't until I started dating my current boyfriend that that's kind of when the masculine and feminine energy conversation started getting really popular on social media. And he was different than any other of my previous boyfriends. And I found myself losing like where previously I always had a very strong sense of self, even if I felt insecure about some things in this relationship, I felt like I was constantly, the way I describe it is like running on one of those like rolling logs and I couldn't keep up. Like I couldn't just like stop and relax and like enjoy being in this relationship. So I constantly felt like he was like assessing me about like if I met his standards or not. And not because of anything that he said to me, just because of how amazing and successful he was. And the kind of woman that he followed, like he always followed like very successful, like these really hot, but like really successful woman. And I wasn't running my own business at the time. And I was like very just nervous that I wasn't who he wanted from someone. So I started learning more about like divine feminine energy. And I kept a journal since I was 18. And so I would go back and I would reflect on my journal. And I was like, okay, this girl right here was so happy and like living her best life. Why? Like, why was she so happy? And why am I not so happy right now? And I started reconnecting with myself and I started doing things that like made me feel happy. Like I would go out dancing, I went to the beach, I got my Vespa, like I had independence again. Where what we were talking about while we were offline, like I like lost my sense of independence because I also didn't have a car in Miami. It was expensive to Uber anywhere. I saved up, I bought a Vespa, and having my independence and starting to do things again that made me feel happy built my self confidence again, built my self worth again. And then I was now able to be in this relationship from a place of abundance because I was doing things to love him rather than doing things to like continually prove to myself that I was worthy of him.
Yeah. No,
So that's kind of.
that makes so much sense. I want to unpack that, but something that you said earlier, like I never really journaled up until the last year. And I remember right before my breakup, I went back and read my journal from June, is when I started. It was a year ago, June 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like January. And I remember going back and reading it, and I was like, wow, I've come a really long way in 6 months. And I kind of want to, now that it's been a year, go back and read it again because so much has happened in those 6 months since then. But I
Mm-hmm.
remember, like, there's a big chunk of my childhood that I don't really remember for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do remember, I was, and people tell me this all the time, I was this really happy go lucky little girl. I was very feminine. I was never a Barbie girl. I was a Bratz doll girl, but like I was a dancer and I liked makeup and fashion and shoes and food and like helping people and like, Abuela, what are you making? Can I help you? And I would talk to everybody. And like, I think you would agree that I'm still a lot of those things. And I never
Yeah.
lost fully. Like I've asked my college guy friends this they've known me since I was 17. And I'm like, what was I like in college? Like, if you still like me now, because I know my perception of myself, and we were talking about this too, like my perception of myself, I think is really skewed. And I want to talk about that with you too. But it's
Yeah.
like, I'm really curious how they view me and view me at 17, 18, 19, when I was in the thick of like my depression and self-harm and like really hating myself. And I was hating myself into one day just magically thinking I was going to wake up and like be good enough. And like people were going to like me, people were going to want me, and like I was going to belong. Very similar to you, very similar age.
Yes.
And I think we are the same age or around the same age. Like this was happening at the same time, like parallel.
I think you're November 26th, right?
24th, November 24th.
24th? I'm the 25th.
Oh yeah,
We're literally
like,
one day apart.
we're a day apart. I was like, I know we were like close in age, and like our birthdays, yeah. But I remember it was, you said you were 20 and I was 21, I think 2021, when like the light bulb went off in my head. And I just like, there was a scenario in college, a couple actually, and I just woke up one day and I was like, oh, everything I've been doing, like this isn't gonna get me where I want to go. Like this isn't working for me. Like I don't want to do this anymore. So then when I went to law school, I had made that realization, but I hadn't started doing anything about it because I was like, I need to get into law school and I need to get good grades. But I did so poorly at the beginning of law school that a year later, a year and a half later, I was like, do I really want this? Like, what am I doing here? Who am I? What is this? What do I want? And that was when so now I'm 22, 23. And that's when really like I turned the dial on like going inward and like remembering who I was and like going back to that inner child and like doing all the self work. So in the last 3 years, I've really done a lot of it. And what I've really uncovered about myself is that, yeah, there is a very feminine version of me inside, but I built a lot of walls to protect myself from my own perception that people were out to get me, people wanted to hurt me, and that I wasn't good enough. And like, I really started to build all of these walls around myself that ultimately now people can't get in. And it's like, so I'm very masculine. I come off very intense or very aggressive. And the people who've known me for a very long time and have seen the many versions of me, deep down, that my college friends, they're like, no, you are very feminine. What do you mean you're masculine? It's because they know that they saw that hurt little girl inside begging for help. Even though I thought I was like being like tough bitch, like, you know, like I've always been a guy's girl. So I think that's also why I struggled. Like, I was a dancer my entire life, and like I had like two versions of me. Like I was like this really feminine dancer, but like I like sports. I like getting dirty. I can't play sports for shit, but like I like adventure. I like being outside. I like, you know, being with the guys, and like it doesn't bother me. Like it's funny. I think it's hilarious and it's fun. And like, so I could get along with both. I thought I was one of the guys, and in a lot of ways I am. And then but even then they're like, we've never viewed you the way that we view other girls. Like, and I was like, that's so interesting. Like, I think my perception of myself is so fucked up. And I'm really trying to figure out who I am. And that's what I've gone on this journey of like remembering who my inner child was, going back to myself, like rediscovering who I am in that feminine version of myself. And I think literally because we're the same age, like we're going through this at the exact same time. So it's curious. That's why I wanted to have you on and ask like when that started for you, because for you is being in a relationship and like challenging yourself of like, okay, let me not lose my independence. Let me remember who I am. Because I had to also be in a relationship to realize that the person I was showing up as is not who I'm meant to be. But my relationship did not last because I chose myself to take more time for myself. But I'm really curious how you worked through all of that while maintaining in a relationship, let alone the same relationship, because I'd imagine that's really difficult.
My boyfriend has always done a really good job of being there for me. Always. Like, when I look back at the first 2 years of my relationship, I'm like, why the heck did you stay with me? Like, I was so insecure. Like, I always thought if he ever left the house, he was going to meet someone who was better than me. Like, and it reflected in the way that, like, he would come home and I'd, like, be cold. And I was confused because I had never in my life been insecure in a relationship ever. I never even thought about the possibility that I should be insecure about things. And I really, yeah, I guess I do know why, and they were valid reasons, but yeah, I don't know. The way I did it in the same relationship is I truly believe.
Before that, like, why do you think he stayed? Like, you asked, like, why did you stay? Like, what do you think originally attracted him to you? And if you felt that you were so unworthy, like, before you even started doing the work, like, why do you think he wanted to be with you in 2 years to really discover who you were now?
We were friends for 2 years. I really don't know. We were friends for two
He needs
years.
to come on the podcast. We need to dissect this.
So we'd known each other for I wouldn't say we were friends because I actually told him straight up we're not friends, we're acquaintances. Um, so we'd known each other for 2 years, and I think like if we're gonna like talk about like buzzwords right now, I think I kind of gave him the chase because he liked me for 2 years, and I like didn't sleep. We had like a very small friend group. Like I never slept around. I always very much stayed to myself. I dated one person. Um, and he would always kind of like heart eyes my Instagram stories and things like that. And so when we started dating, he was so sure that having a girlfriend would infringe on his ability to have a successful business because I would take up too much of his time or too much of his attention. And I think that in the beginning of when we started talking, I still was like very sure of myself. I did not need to be in this relationship. And so that reflected in our energy where he was like, I really like this girl, but she's like not begging for more of my time. Like she doesn't seem needy, essentially. And like I would call him out, be like, hey, it's 10 p.m. You haven't called me all day. Like that's not cool. But other than that, like I wasn't. You're not texting me. You're not calling me. Like I'm sure that he experienced previously. Yeah. So I think that that's what attracted him to me is that he had liked me for 2 years before, and then he started to like enter a romantic relationship with me, and I wasn't needy. So then I moved out to California to San Diego where he lived, and we started dating, and I was like my normal self. Like I'd say like the first 6 months I was like very okay. Like he just enjoyed being around me, I think is what it is.
I mean, that's a start.
I just think he enjoyed being around me.
No, that's good. Like that's at the end of the day, the basis of a relationship is a friendship, and you have to like who you are with someone, and you have to like being around that person too. And I think a lot of people, we were talking about this briefly, like I think that's like the downside of dating apps is that, and like I said it earlier too, like, and like to some extent dating is a numbers game. You have to kiss a lot of frogs to find the right people, and you also learn a lot about yourself in the process. But at the end of the day, I think why it's so much harder sometimes with dating apps is because you're skipping the friendship stage really fast. Like it's only the talking stage is the friendship stage, but talking is not friendship because you're flirting, you're sexting, you're talking about building a future, really making sure like, is this the person I want to build a future with?
But you shouldn't be sexting. You shouldn't be sexting in the talking stage. We can talk about
that in a second. But let's be honest, most of us and I agree. But like to your point, like you guys, he liked who he was around you, and he liked spending time with you because you guys really built a friendship first. And I think I said this to you too. Like I don't know if the person that I will end up marrying and spend the rest of my life with, hopefully, is already in my life. I can't say for certain, but I think so. Or it's somebody that I already know in my circles. Why? Because I have a lot of really great guy friends, and I've built a lot of really strong friendships with them. And they genuinely, we have so much fun together, and we care about each other, and we willingly check in on each other. And it's like, that's the basis of the friendship, like of a relationship too. Like you don't get that on a dating app. So
yeah,
I think that's why he was attracted to you for so long. But yeah, what was that like moment for you that you felt like you had lost yourself, and how did you regain yourself? Because I really struggle with I had a fear of losing my independence in a relationship, and I ultimately never did lose myself, but I realized I wasn't being 100% myself. That's kind of what happened to you too.
Yeah. If I go back in my journal entries, there are so many entries where I'm like, I don't know if he's the one. I think I should break up with him. I'm feeling distance from him. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't like 100% sure that we were gonna stay together. Also because I tend to have more of an avoidant personality, and so by me needing him, I felt like I also needed at the same time to like distance myself from him so I
Yeah,
wouldn't need him so much.
I know what you
It
mean.
was this weird push and pull. Like I felt disgusted in myself by being needy, so I needed to distance myself from him.
Yeah,
But
I struggle with that too.
he just continually showed up for me in the relationship. He continually assured me. He was so steady and so strong and like called me out when I needed to be called out, but also was continually encouraging me and like never made me feel bad about myself. And so that's why I think I was able to come around and stay in the relationship while I was figuring all of this out, because the only thing he did for me was uplift me.
That's huge.
Like he gave me my space and he just encouraged me.
That's huge though, because not a
Yeah.
lot of people can
He
say
is
that.
the most, yeah.
I really want to have him on and talk about how he got to where he is, because most guys are not. I'm not gonna say that they're not willing to be like that, but they're not. They're just they're not they're not secure in themselves enough to continuously show up for the people around them. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, he's a very successful entrepreneur. We've talked a little bit about that. Like, and I'm sure the business success has allowed him to be that way in his personal life. But have you guys talked about like where that comes from for him? Like how was he able to continuously show up and reassure you? Were you talking to him about being like how you were feeling? Like how was he being there for you that in that way that you needed him to be?
I haven't really thought about this. I think a lot of what was going on for me was internal, and I didn't want to be open and vulnerable with him because it had nothing to do with him. Like, it wasn't anything that he was doing that made me feel this way. I knew it was something internal that I had to work on and deal with. And because he was so amazing, it made me want to be worthy of his amazingness, but not because I needed that validation from him that like or even for myself that like, okay, I am now the person that he deserves, but because I knew that I wanted to get back to the person that I was in the beginning of our relationship, who was so secure. And I knew that when I did that, then I would, by as a byproduct, be the person that he knew I could be,
Yeah.
essentially. Um, yeah, I should probably ask him because I would be really curious to know why he continued to stay with me. But I will say that I wasn't like I don't actually, I really don't know. I'll have to ask him that.
Okay, report back to me. But I'm asking because I think it like for in my experience, I did not have that safety and security and that reassurance from my partner. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
ultimately why it was a mirror. Like I didn't think I was I've never been I told you this, like I'm not one to be a jealous or insecure person. We all have our insecurities,
Mm-hmm.
don't get me wrong. But like I've always
Yeah.
been a very confident outward person. My issue has always been
Mm-hmm.
self-worth and feeling like I wasn't good enough. But I know what my root causes are. And he was
Mm-hmm.
bringing up a whole host of them that had nothing to do with that. So I was like, he was my mirror. And you had the opposite, where you had the
Mm-hmm.
reassurance piece that gave you the strength to look in your mirror and do the work. Whereas it left me with a whole lot more questions than reassurance. Like, and that's ultimately why I chose myself as like, I'm not going to be able to rebuild all of this and get back to that secure person and the happy-go-lucky version of me and living my best life in this relationship. It's only going to bring out a worse side of me. And it's leaving me worse off than I was when I started. And if someone's not adding to your life or helping you, you can't stay. So that's why I'm curious, like, where that came from for him, or what his thought process was, and like, just selfishly to really like to look for those signs in a partner, like to know what to look for because we all have our insecurities, and like, you have to be vulnerable with your partner and like share what's going on and talk about those things. And I was really open with him at the beginning, and then I started closing myself off to him because I realized it wasn't helping, it was hurting. And I'm one to talk a lot. Like, if I can't talk to my friends about what's going on in my life, I'm like, why? We're not friends. Like, we can't be friends. Like, this isn't working. So that's why I'm like really curious, like, for you, like how that came about.
He definitely showed me things where I wasn't. He definitely was acting as my mirror, where he showed me my potential or showed me where I wasn't meeting my potential, which I think is where my insecurity came in. But once I took my power back and I realized, okay, I am the person who is capable of meeting my potential, I think the thing is that I'm like, I haven't really thought about like all of this, all the questions that you're asking me, which is why I'm having such a hard time answering.
No,
But
it's like, I like that I'm asking you the hard questions, because we'll get to the more the work
easy ones
online, but like, this is really helpful. This is literally me just doing a case study, because what you just said, like, he showed you where you were not meeting your potential, but he was showing you that you have all this potential. And it, like, so he was showing you here and you were realizing you're here, but he empowered you to get there. Whereas I knew I was here and my ex wanted someone here. So he was showing me all of this, and like, it was bringing me down. Like, I realized ultimately, like, the cited reason that I left is my needs weren't being met, and I just realized I wasn't being 100% myself. Like, the version I remember telling him, I was like, I think you have a vision in your head of who your partner, who your wife and the mother of your children is, and that's okay, but that's not me. And in order for me to become that version, I would have to lessen who I am. And I refuse to do that for you or for anyone. So what are we still doing?
Yeah. I think
it was the opposite. He showed you, you're here, but you can be here. Why? Like, I want you to be here. Let's get you there. So that's what set you off on this path. And like, so it's funny, it parallels, but like, yeah.
Did your ex, did he have like, what were his goals in life?
It's so funny because you met him, but
I know, but I was like, hi, my name's Lauren.
I know, you didn't really talk to him, but it's just funny that, because you, like, Sarah never actually met him. She talked to him a few times, but she never actually met him in person. His and this is really hard to answer because I don't want to talk poorly about the military, because my dad's military and I have a lot of friends that are military, and
Okay, let me answer this. Do you think that his goals were more aspirational than yours? On a completely objective, like, his goal might be to like rank in the army. Your goal has nothing to do with the army. Your goal is to make $1 million a month as a lawyer, making a huge impact. Like,
I think I was more aspirational. It's not that he didn't have goals. He had goals for himself, and he wanted to be successful, and he was very successful. Like, on paper, he was doing very, very well for himself, and that was attractive to me, and I liked that. And that's what I mean. Like, it's like, when we first started talking on paper, like, what our life looks like literally, like, you know, when you played like MASH as a kid and you like described like what the different sectors to your life would look like. We were on paper, we matched. When we did that exercise, like, we matched. But it was how we went about getting there and what that looked like and how it felt was different. Like, he was very, and that's again like the military thing, it's like his path was very clean cut, drawn forward, military life, and he was going to have a whole lot of things going on the side that were going to supplement. But like he was very regimented, and like he was okay with that. He wanted the structure, and I understand why. Like knowing him, and like we can talk more offline, like I understand why that was his like. But for me, it's like I had come from a place that was so regimented that I did not want to be regimented anymore. I wanted to be more spontaneous and easygoing and free and like kind of eat, pray, love, like figure it out on my own. Like my business was my structure to give me the semblance of structure that I needed. My law degree was going to give me that structure.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, I have my whole life to, you know, be married with a kid and like sit on the back porch watching my grandkids. Like that's not where I'm at yet. Whereas like his career was retirement at 39, because after 20 years in the military, you get a really nice pension. And he's like, then I'm free at 39, then I'll do all the fun things I want to do. Okay. I'm like, I'm not gonna wait until I'm 37 and you're 39 to just live my life. Yeah. I want to do that now. And that's ultimately where like I just think like we were going parallel for so long, and then all of a sudden we realized that like our end goals might have been the same, but how we went about it were different, and ultimately we just didn't match anymore. So it's not that he didn't have aspirations. He absolutely did. Like I think I've told you this. Like he joked, for Christmas, he got me like the base carry-on, and only because I said that I wanted to get that for myself. He's like, oh, I'll get it for you. And I was like, no, it's okay, like I can do it. And he's like, don't worry, like it's fine, like I got it, like Christmas gift, like. So he bought it for me, and I was like, oh, thank you. Like I said it to you, just thinking out loud, like, oh, I want to get myself this. It wasn't like a subliminal message, like. But cool, it worked, awesome. But so then and this one was fully kidding, but I was curious what his reaction was gonna be. Yeah. You could ask Sarah about this. It's like, for my 30th birthday, like I want to get myself a Birkin. Like, I was 25, 26. Like I had just turned 26. Yeah. Because it was like my birthday. We started dating right before my birthday. And so I was like I had like, I normally buy myself like a really nice gift for my birthday every year, and I didn't do that this year because my business was taking up all my expenses, and like, that was my priority. It was like, this year's my business, next year will be my house. Like I'm okay with this year not getting myself anything. But like when I turn 37, like when I turn 30, like I really want to get myself a Birkin. Like that's like a really nice, like 30 is a big deal. Like I've come a long way, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, I'll get you one. And I was like, do you know how much that costs? He goes, yeah, I can get you one. I was like, what do you mean? And that's how I realized, like, oh shit, like this guy's like very well off, like, and very successful. And I didn't know that because you think military, you don't think that. And so I was like, on paper, we matched. And like, even though he lived a very regimented and like very like, I don't know what the right word is, but like industrial, I guess, life, like military is very like, you know, fatigues and very like monochrome and like all this stuff. Like there was more to him. He was business minded. He liked cars. He liked Formula One. He liked traveling. Like he liked good food. Like we would go to nice restaurants. Like he liked all. I'm like, oh, okay. Like we are a lot more online on certain things. And then I realized like the career that allows him to do that is the what's keeping him in there is the problem. It's not the career. It's what's keeping him in it. And it's like, this is not anymore. So yeah, like, and you asked me offline, like what you think the purpose of me getting into my next relationship would be. And it's like, I honestly don't know, because I'm still unpacking so much from the last one. But what I realized is like what we're talking about here, like I want to be in that feminine version of myself. I'm a lot happier in that version of myself. And it's just a more easeful, slow, refreshing life than having to be on all the time. And I want to be able to look at my partner and trust that he's going to take care of that and support me in that. And like, I want to help him do it, but my skill set's different because I have to be so masculine in business every day. I want to come home and like proverbially like kick my feet up and like not have to worry about things.
Have you thought about working with a coach who teaches you how to approach business from a feminine way?
I don't think so.
Because because based off of our conversation,
Coach, but I know what you're talking about. Continue. Yeah, I think it would benefit me.
because from our conversations, what you keep repeating is I have to be masculine in order to do this. I have to be masculine in order to do this. And I'm not any sort of therapist, I'm not certified or anything. But it sounds like what you're saying is that in order for me to achieve what I want to achieve and to succeed in the way that I want to succeed, I have to be masculine. Do you disagree with that?
Deep down, I want to disagree with you because I don't want to think that way. But in practicality, yes, I know that that's the case. But I think wanting to be different is the first step. It's now actually about taking the steps to live it, which you told me that earlier too.
Yeah. Yeah, because I would encourage you to get rid of the belief that in order to succeed you have to be masculine, because as a woman, our power comes from our femininity, and using both masculine and feminine energy in order to succeed, because that's when we're able to achieve and feel fulfilled, because we're not in this constant chase.
Yeah.
It's like we're also being fulfilled in the chase.
Okay. I like that.
So I don't know what that looks like for you, but that's why I would work with someone who specifically works with women being feminine in business. Um,
And it's funny
because it's,
because
yeah.
I've set up my business where I can be feminine in my business if I want to be. I think it's
And what does being feminine in your business look like for you? Like, what is that, when you say that, what do you mean?
that I can work from anywhere. I don't have to be on from a certain hour to a certain hour. That I get to pick and choose the clients I work with and like who I work with, and I enjoy what I do, like all of those things. Like, and I was very intentional about that. That's why I chose to not go into big law or into a traditional legal field. But I think
Mm-hmm.
my conditioning as eldest daughter, firstborn in this country of immigrants, going to law school, like I got very I don't want to say I bought into that, but like that's just like that was where I was raised. Like that was what was comfortable with me for so long. But it never felt right. It never sat right with me to the point that like now I'm like, okay, like I know like that's why that there's this other side that's like it's an inkling. Like I need to listen to it more. But yeah, I agree. I do want to invest in a coach at some point, probably next year, to help me in business.
YouTube videos. So many good YouTube videos.
Yeah. I need to sit and like I've gotten a lot better about what I consume, being more beneficial in like feeding my soul in a way, and like and you've been a big part of that without even realizing. Like you introduced Sarah to Simple Abundance and she introduced it to me, and I want to get to that in a second. But like books like that, and like I'll I see other women living lives the way I've thought that I wanted to live them, and that no longer appeals to me. And then I look
Mm-hmm.
at someone like you, and I'm like, oh, that's like what that could be. Like, I do want that. So I think I'm getting closer and closer to it. But it's, yeah, since I've known you is when all of these limiting beliefs and things have come up for me. In all the 3 years that I had been doing the work on myself previously, I had done so much work on myself, but like this was like the next level of unlocking who I'm really supposed to be. And like that's why I've really struggled with dating again, and I think in my relationship and even in business to some extent, because I'm operating from one place but I want to be operating in another. And it's like trying to find that balance. So I'm curious, now that you are a business owner, what does operating a business in your feminine energy look like to you?
Okay. This is such a hard question for like, how do I do something femininely? Because when I'm in touch with my feminine energy, I'm not analyzing how I'm doing things.
That's fair.
So let me put my masculine cap on and analyze how I do things femininely. um,
But okay, just walk me through your day. Like, walk me through like how you like go about your day so you're
yeah,
intentional with
yeah.
who you are and still doing all the things that you set out to do, which is quietly becoming, and talk about that.
Okay. Full morning day because it has changed since we've gotten a puppy. So
That's
full
also
morning day. We wake up. I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning every morning, and I take care of our puppy and let her do her thing. The things that I do that ground me in the morning, that really tap me into my feminine energy, so I don't feel stressed first thing. I typically play a happy song in the morning. I strongly believe in the music that we listen to. Like, I don't listen to negative music, whether it's Kesha, whether it's about breakups, rap music, like negative rap music. I don't listen to it. So my songs in the morning are typically Just a Cloud Away by Pharrell Williams, Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield, or I have like my happy music playlist. And I just like, even while I'm like, I'll like brush my teeth and I'm dancing and just enjoying, I'm like in this enjoyment stage.
The first video I ever saw of yours before I met you was of you like getting ready and like singing and dancing in your bathroom. So that's really funny.
Dude, I swear every woman should, you don't even have to be playing music, just like dance, like just like enjoying your life in the morning. And there are times when I have to try, like first days when we got our puppy, I had to try, it was not natural for me to want to be happy in that moment or to enjoy my life. Like, I had to do it for myself because I knew it was the right thing to do. But then in the post, I was like, okay, I'm so glad I did that for myself. Brush my teeth, do skincare, get my coffee. I read Simple Abundance every single morning. It always puts me in the right mindset, and it's so good. Simple Abundance, Sarah Ban Breathnach, so good. Then there is a Abraham Hicks podcast that I listen to, and I listen to it like sometimes I listen to it very intentionally. Sometimes I put headphones in and I like clean up the house while I'm listening to it, so it's like a little bit more subconscious. But you can find it on YouTube. It is in Infinite Intelligence, I think, episode 9, and it's like a Abraham Hicks rampage. And I have this and it says, I will look for reasons to feel good, and I will find them. And if I stumble upon something that doesn't feel so good, I will revel in the perfection of my guidance system, and I will make the adjustment today. So that's like so many good little blurbs like that in this morning thing. It's just like so good. I have it pinned behind my desk.
Send me the link
and then I
playlist and to this podcast. I can put it in the show notes.
Okay. Yes, I will do that. And then I start my workday, and I usually start it by responding to any sort of like DM questions that I have, because that usually gets my juices flowing for what kind of content to make. And I love helping and answering people in my DMs. So I usually start with that. And then I'm like working on like, I need to shoot a new VSL. So like, and then I'll start doing my tasks for the day. So that's kind of it. But when I'm working, my work currently, and this is, I think, the biggest luxury in the entire world, is that anything that's hard in my business right now, I simply see as a challenge that I am capable of conquering, because I know the end result of my business right now is something that I am so passionate and excited about. And that makes the biggest difference in the world. Because when I have issues inside of, like when I had a job and I had issues inside of something that I was not enjoying, and then I had to like really fight hard to like feel good about, that was exhausting for me. Like every challenge was like a ginormous mountain, versus now, like I am not doing something right, or I'm not getting the clients as I want. I'm like, okay, how do I overcome this? Like it's an empowering decision rather than like another defeating decision. And I think that makes all the difference in the world. That's not something you can like really fake.
No, that's huge though. And like you said, yes, it is a luxury, but you created I want to say the systems in your life, but you created a life where you could live a life of luxury. And that's why quiet luxury has become such a like a popular thing. It's because it looks so effortless, but actually takes a whole lot of effort to be effortless. And like there's a lot that
Yeah.
people don't see to get there, which is why I wanted to unpack this with you on here. And again, use you as a case study for my life, because you asked me like, what does being feminine in my business look like? And like how I yeah, like my end goal in business, like I do strongly believe in it. I'm very passionate about it. I know what I want my life to look and feel like. That is the first, that was the basis for at 23 turning my life around. Asking myself, what I want my life to look and feel like, and okay, now that I know that, where am I right now and how am I going to get there? And I reverse engineered my life
Yeah.
that way. But the type A
So smart.
version of me still needed that structure to some extent. And I'm realizing now
Yeah.
that it's okay to, and it was never like timelines. It was never like this needs to happen by this time. And I know a lot of people are like that. It was never that, but it was just benchmarks. But I'm a lot further in some ways and nowhere near in others. And like, and that's again where I've been at in the last 6 months, 7 months, where I'm like, okay, maybe let's go back to the drawing board and reorganize again. And that's what I'm doing this month in particular, taking the time to do this, which is why I wanted to have this conversation with you now. And yeah, like I really want to show up the way you like, I want to take your like advice genuinely and like stop trying to make it all be so perfect. But like it is a luxury at some extent to not have to worry about where my the next paycheck is gonna come from, or like pay the bills. Like that's just, I'm not 100% at that point yet, but the goal is to get to that point where I can live more abundantly and comfortably in business and in life. Because in life I'm doing okay, it's in business, but when you are an entrepreneur and you're single, it's a lot harder to do both. So I look at you and I'm like, that's my aspiration, is like, I want to get to the place where you have already unlocked. But it's, for me, it's getting to that place. And like, I know a lot of people are where I'm at, or even, not yet in a position where they can be on their own, if that's something that they're looking for and they're saving up to do that, or they're brainstorming, like, what is it going to get them there? So that's why this is like a really important conversation to me to have.
Yeah. I don't know if this is what you said. Did you say that you wanted, what is your reasoning for wanting to essentially like, for using me as an inspiration?
Just that you, like what you said about, you, it's a luxury that you are building your business and you are just letting it kind of go, like happen the way it's happening, and you don't regiment your life. You just like, you wake up and you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to create content about, and like I don't have to worry about, like when you were in a job you didn't like it, and you don't think of it as a problem, you think of it as a challenge basically. And it's like, it's just a lot more abundant and easeful in your life, in your business, and that you recognize that that's a luxury. It's like, it always felt like, it's not that it's an unattainable luxury for me. I think it is attainable for me, and it's attainable for anybody. It's a mindset thing, but it's that mindset shift of viewing it as a challenge to overcome versus a problem, like a barrier. And I think in the last year, I started changing it to a challenge where it's like, oh, it's okay. Like I'll figure it out. And that has served me well. But I think for a very long time, it was a barrier. It was a problem. Like, I can't do this because this, or like, this isn't going to work out for me because this. And I put a lot of excuses, limiting beliefs on myself. And like, I've done a lot of that work on myself in the last 3 years, but I think this year was that unlocking of that feminine unlocking of being more, not caring so much about how it looks on paper, or that it has to look a certain way, not to compare myself to anybody else, but that like, it doesn't look like the vision in my head. Like, it's okay that it doesn't look the way that I want it to, if it's working.
Do you feel the way you want to feel right now?
It's a good question. I think I'm feeling
Because
the way I feel. I think I'm feeling the way I need to be feeling right now, because it's challenging me to think differently and to
Yes.
approach it differently. I think I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. And I want to revisit this
Okay.
conversation on a personal note, like this specific one right now, in like 3 months, because I feel like 3 months the answer is going to be different.
Yeah. I would just, and you might be at this place right now, but I would just want to remind you that however you think you're going to feel when you achieve what you want to achieve, you have to feel that way first.
Yeah.
So just like reminding yourself of that.
And that's what it is. Like I was like, you know, the saying, like we've said it before, like you can't hate yourself into loving your body. Like you can't hate your body into loving it. Like you're not going to
Yeah.
put yourself through all this hell and then one day magically like who you are in there. Like, yeah, you have to
Yeah.
believe that you like look that way. Like I genuinely think I manifested passing the bar exam because I told myself every single day that I was going to pass. I was going to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
That was the first time that it ever really worked for me. And I think it only worked because I had genuinely put in the work for 3 years to get there. And so it's like, and then but I kind of reverted back to that old mentality with business. I was like, I was doing all the things that were going to get me to where I wanted to go, but I didn't believe I was worthy of them because I was looking at all the things I wasn't doing or wasn't able to do yet. I would say all these bigger things yet. And it's like the way you talk, mindset, like that was, I realize now in the last 6 months, like again, that relationship was a mirror for me in the best way possible. Like it could have hurt me and it could have broken me. And I took it and I left with like a big ass, like Mary Poppins bag of like shit I need to deal with. Like, and I've been working.
Yeah.
It's like about, like, I genuinely believe in what I'm building and I know that it's working. I just need to keep believing in that and it will work out. And that's why I went to New York on a whim last week, you know, and I figured it out and it was the best week and I'm glad I did. And like that's something that like I really struggled internally with for a few weeks, but I'm like, should I do it? Should I do it? Like I don't know if I can do it. And it's like, you know what? Like I have the miles on my like might as well go. Like I'm so grateful that I did it. And
Yeah.
and like there's been a handful of instances in the last 2 to 3 years where I've taken a risk like that and it's paid off.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to like something, I forgot who said this, but I feel like you're going to love this. You can't rationalize intuition. And no. I've always been a really in the gut intuition person, like, but the business mindset, lawyer brain, more masculine side of me has always wanted to rationalize it. And I end up doing what my gut intuition told me to do, but 6 months later, and it's not as satisfying because I rationalize the hell out of it. And I'm not rationalizing it so much and just going forward. And my fear is, I have 2 fears. Losing my independence in a relationship, which now I conquered because I had never been in a relationship before because I was afraid of it. I was in one, I realized I didn't lose myself. I just wasn't being 100% myself. So I conquered that one. The one that is even deeper rooted that I'm still really struggling with, but I'm picking apart out little by little is fear of losing control. I always thought that I had to have a plan or rationalize it because I'm too scared to jump without knowing that someone's going to catch me. And I always depended on, I latched onto people that made me feel safe and secure, but that wasn't their job. So ultimately they left because it wasn't their job. And then I was left feeling abandoned. So then it like, reinforced like, oh, I can't do that because then I have no control. So I'm really like, that's currently where I'm at. And like, I know you don't really drink or you're not a big drinker. And like, I'm not either because I don't want to lose my facilities. You know, I don't want to like, or faculties is the right word. Like, I don't want to lose like control of like, I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't know what's going to happen to me. Like all the, that's where it manifests for me. And I didn't realize I was doing it in my relationships. And that's like been the biggest unlock for me. I've lost a lot of friends in the last 6 months to a year, my relationship, all because of hoping that someone else was gonna save me and pick up the pieces for me and be my safety net without realizing that I needed to be that person to myself. So it's like both, like
What is your relationship with God like?
what?
What is your relationship with God like?
So I've actually gotten a lot more spiritual in the last few years as well.
Uh-huh.
Throughout those like 3 years in law school, when I started manifesting more and journaling and vision board and like all of this stuff, like I started praying a lot more. And so on
Mm-hmm.
occasion I'll go to church with my grandma now. Um because yeah, I realize like I've always had a relationship with God. I've always been like religious, but definitely on the more spiritual side of things. But I've
Yeah.
always I've always said I wanted to get married in the Catholic Church. For the ceremony of it, the tradition of it always
Yeah.
called to me, and even more so now because it's like it represents that like tradition and culture and like I don't know, like I've always had that relationship. It's gotten a lot stronger for sure.
Mm-hmm. Because when I was severely depressed in high school, I can 100% confidently say that it is my relationship with a higher power who knows who I was meant to be that was able to pull me out of that. It has been the thing that continually tells me who I am, what my purpose is. It's what makes me feel alive in the morning. When I am truly connected to God, to Source, it allows me to see things outside of the 3D and focus on what actually truly matters. And I get these downloads of what I need to be focusing on or what I need to be doing or what's holding me back from the thing that I want in my life. Because when we continually try to rely on our physical bodies or our physical minds to tell us what we need or what we want, we will fail ourselves every single time. And I strongly believe that God lives within every single one of us. And it is when we are so connected to that decisions become easier because we are divinely guided.
Yeah.
And we don't like I know that my thing when I was in high school and I was so like what happened was I was friends with this one girl who was like really popular in middle school and like I really wanted to be her friend and we had started hanging out and I had invited another friend to hang out with us and they suddenly became like literally best friends, like went on all these trips together in high school and like I just felt like I wasn't enough and I like needed their friendship in order to prove to myself that I was like cool in middle school, high school. And when I stopped trying to rely on myself to prove that I was enough, and I went back and I was like, okay, because I've always had a very good relationship with God. Like I was raised kind of like, I was not like raised legalistically, where it's like, if you do this, you go to hell. Like, I've always had a very
Yeah, neither was
good
I.
relationship with God, which gave me a huge advantage. But when I reconnected with that, like, I realized that I was letting myself down by allowing other people to let me down when I had such a like huge purpose to live that had nothing to do with whether or not these girls wanted to be my friends.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly where I was going with that there,
No, I can
but
I don't know where you're going either, but I
when I because you were talking about the need for control.
yeah.
I think that's where I'm trying to like tie the loop here.
You are, but I don't know what you're gonna say.
You lose the need for control in your life when you know that everything is divinely orchestrated.
Okay, yes.
That's I think that's the point that I'm trying to make here is that we like get so like tense like trying to control everything and like if we're going to try and let go and be in our feminine we have to be divinely guided by something, like something has to be looking out for our greater good and we have to be able to trust in something that's bigger than ourselves. So really connecting with God in that way, then allowing us to be able to trust ourselves, to trust God, like it just it's like this big circle. You have to do this, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then it like that relationship becomes so intimate and so bonded that like you never stress about anything ever again because you know it all works out the way it's exactly how it's supposed to for your greater good.
Yeah. I
So you
completely
lose that need for control.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that's why I started praying a lot more and trusting and in simple abundance she calls it spirit. For
Spirit,
people who
yeah.
aren't super religious, she's like, oh, we'll call it this, but that's what I'm referring to, like something in the universe, like a higher power. Um, and I agree. I think that's part of why I started manifesting, and that's where I really started thinking a lot more abundantly. And like I said, it was working for a really long time until then I started being in business, and then I kind of reverted back into, and it's like I feel like I'm like halfway in the hole. Like I'm like I want to be outside and breathe fresh air, but like it's like it's my default setting to like be in that like that mindset that's not helping me anymore because it's safer, and
Yeah.
you have to be challenged to get out of your comfort zone to grow.
Yeah.
But I think, like I said, like I manifested passing the bar exam.
Yeah.
I I I literally was like, at some point I was just like, I've not put in as nearly as many hours as I could have because my mental health came first, and I knew that if I wasn't doing this, I was not going to be able to show up. So I just walked into that exam being like, if I have to take it again, I have to take it again, but like I'm gonna give it the best I can, and I'm gonna do my best, and like I'm gonna trust that like it's gonna work out. And I genuinely believed that it was gonna work out, and it did.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't really done that since. Like I think at the beginning of my relationship I was, like I told you, with like, not mapping myself and kind of trusting him. And like it felt really scary, but also I've always been like, I love reading romance novels. I've always been a big reader. And
Yeah.
so it's really easy for me to fantasize about like my future husband and like my life, and like I can get really in the weed. I can write several books on all the fantasies that have come up with my head. But if I really think about it, they're not fantasies. They're me making decisions for like these imaginary characters in my head. Like I'm planning, I'm plotting, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
planning, and I think I convince myself that they're dreams and they're visions because that's how I talk about them. But in reality, they're not. They're really me creating it. And it's like, even in my dreams, I'm curating it. It's like, stop trying so hard to control everything. Just let it happen. And that's why I
Yeah.
realized like I was seeking safety and security in another person, and I have to actually do it myself, and I have to give up that control to trust that I can do so. And that's, you said that's me earlier too, like, you know, letting a guy open the door for you, or letting a guy, it's like, just let them, like, just do it. Like don't try to do it, let them do it for you. And like I'm really good at that with strangers, but when I know them, it's like I'm just like I don't know why. And it's like just like allowing myself, like, if okay, like let them, like, I have to trust that it's gonna work out for me. I don't have to make the motion, like it's gonna be okay. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Like that's why I really wanted to have this conversation with you, because with Quietly Becoming, which I want to talk about, like what made you decide to pursue this as a business in
Mm-hmm.
addition to modeling and stuff. For people who don't know, you're also a model.
Yes.
But you started your own business helping women in this journey, and that's why
Mm-hmm.
I really gravitate towards that content that you create, because it's the journey that I'm on. But I'm curious, like that's why I wanted to have you on, because it's like it's really easy to read those things and look at someone who's already in that and be like, okay, sounds nice, but I don't know how to get there. So I'm like, I wanted to unpack how we got there, but talk more
Yeah.
about deciding to make this a business, and how do you, I think we kind of touched on it, but like showing up in a feminine sense when you are still treating this like a business, and you want people to work with you.
Yeah. I would say that I actually struggle growing my business right now because I'm so try to so much approach things femininely that it's hard for me to be in my masculine and like to take action like that, especially in a business where I'm like unfamiliar with running my own business. So like it's very hard for me. So I'd say it's actually kind of like my weakness. But Quietly Becoming has originally started because my boyfriend's always talked to me about running my own business, and I've tried multiple different offers, most of them in like the fitness area, because that's also another area of expertise of mine. And my main vision from my life, like when I have children and I'm 50 years old, is to be running a foundation educating children on financial and relationship kind of like literacy, that in that area of just like, this is the basics of like being financially responsible, and this is the basics of being in a healthy relationship. Like that's my MO. And so with Quietly Becoming, dating the man that I'm dating, I would get a lot of questions from people, especially at like events that we would go to or like events that he'd host about like how do you guys like how does your relationship work? How is it dating this kind of guy? So I'd get a lot of questions like that. And I love talking about how to have a healthy relationship. So that's kind of where Quietly Becoming has come from, is being in the relationship that I'm in, having the experience that I've had, and seeing relationships the way that I see them, and being able to help other women with their relationships, especially dating like I love working with women who want to be in relationships with powerhouse men. Like that's my I love that because it I have a whole I just shot a whole class on it. Because dating that kind of guy who has very high standards for himself and has very high standards for his partner is different than just kind of like dating a regular guy who like wants to get married and like doesn't really think about the standards that he has for his partner, actively thinking about that.
Yeah. But
So that's kind of where Quietly is
there too, though, and I think you've touched on this in one of your videos, but dating someone who is very, very successful and being in your feminine, like there is a lot of challenges there. Like how do you navigate that? Because I feel like, to the point, like I think why people are so interested in you guys is, it's like, okay, how is she okay with him doing all those things if she's like at home like doing all that stuff? Because that's what people think when they think feminine, and it's like,
Yeah.
how does he, if he's so successful and like wants to do all this stuff, like how is he okay with the woman who only like takes care of herself all day and is like very like self-centered and focused on her looks? Like, because again, that's what they view as like feminine, and obviously that's not the case. That's again why I wanted to have you on, and like why this is so passionate for you, for you. But like, what do you say to people?
I don't actually get like I don't. That's not the assumption that people have, or at least that's not the kind of like I don't have to explain that part to a lot of people, I guess. For me in my relationship, the dynamic that we have, at least, because in the beginning of our relationship, he thought he wanted like an Alex Hermosi, Layla Hermosi type relationship where he was like building this massive business with a woman who also had the same like financial and goals for him. And I started working within one of his companies that he just had invested in. And I was working all the time and I was like running a team and I was like very like business minded. And suddenly I was not as like affectionate with him, or I didn't have time to like cuddle on the couch after work because I had like things to catch up on. And he told me, he's like, I don't want that. Don't be that person. I don't want that. Because he is so, the thing about my boyfriend
Wait,
is that
actually, that's what my ex was too. He wanted that like power couple duo.
Yeah.
And to me, to some extent, me too. Like we both wanted that power couple duo, and then we realized we both want someone who is like for me to have been that person who is more affectionate and soft and stuff, but I didn't have the bandwidth to do it if I was building a business. But
Yeah.
I still want my business, so I still want both, but I need to figure out what that balance is for me. But the balance that he wanted was the one that I was willing to strike. So that's really funny that you.
Yeah. I will say that you have to have, and this goes back into like what I was talking about the first year and a half of our relationship. Dating my boyfriend, I have had to have such an intense idea of what my identity is and what I am and am not willing to put up with. Because the other thing is that, and I think people know this, but they don't actually know this, is that you are not going to find a man who was 100% perfect from the beginning. Even if he is like perfect in the first 3 months of the relationship, as you guys get to know each other, there are going to be things that come up for each of you guys that you're going to have to work through together.
Yeah.
And this is where having really good communication comes into play. Because, and being, as a woman, being able to communicate femininely. Because I think that, I'm trying to think of an example of me and my boyfriend. This hasn't really ever happened, but like, for example, let's say that there is a guy that he's hanging out with that I'm just like not really sure about. Like, this other guy's really successful. He's like at my boyfriend's level, but like I just feel like an off feeling about him. Or like my boyfriend and I both know like maybe he like parties with a bunch of girls all of the time, or like does drugs, or I don't know, something. For me to say, to come at it critical, I cannot come at it critically. I cannot come at it attackingly, because just in general, that's not a good way to start a conversation. So I needed to learn how to communicate to my boyfriend things that made me feel uncomfortable in a way that conversation was productive. And the only way that I can do this is to make him think for himself, because that's what he wants to do. He doesn't want to be told what to do. He doesn't want to be told the kind of person that he is. Like, he wants to decide that for himself. So I have to, it's coming from a place of inspiration, which is like so hard for me. But for example, I'd be like, hey, like, I know you're going out to dinner with David again. I just want to let you know, like, I feel this weird feeling about him. Do you think that this guy aligns with your values?
And let him.
Because my boyfriend has such a, and I let him think about it. And he might come at it like, dude, like Lauren, this guy, like, he's an awesome business guy. Like, I learned so much from, like, chill out. Like, I'm not like best friend with the guy. Like, it's no big deal. But subconsciously, my boyfriend also knows that he cares about the people that he surrounds himself with. He cares about the people that he's seen with. And if this is like a horrible guy who's like known for being a bad guy, but like is very successful business wise, my boyfriend probably wouldn't hang out with him again. But it's not my place to make a decision for my boyfriend. So when I talk about being feminine in a relationship, what I'm talking about is knowing what is and is not within your bounds, and always coming from a place of inspiring thought or action in your man. And that's how the conversations are started.
I like that.
But being feminine,
I had similar instances where I definitely realized I have to. My problem isn't usually what I say; it's how I say it. And my delivery is usually off, and that's like something I've been.
Oh, even for me, that's always how it is.
It's very harsh. It's very aggressive. It's very intense. It's very harsh. And yeah, my relationship, I've gotten a lot better at it, and I think that's something that I'm going to continuously have to keep working on. Of like, and I want to talk about this offline with you, but definitely like there was a situation where like there was someone very similar and be like, I don't know about this person, but I didn't approach it the right way. There was no good way to approach it, and we'll talk about it. But like, I have to give you way more context. I can't go too into the weeds on a recording. But it's I think it comes down to reframing femininity though, because I think a lot of people, a past version of myself included, think of it as what I said of like, oh, how does he like someone like that if he's out doing this and she's at home this, or because that's the traditional view of femininity. Like, we still think of 1950s homemaker femininity. And there's nothing wrong with that if you want. But in the mainstream media, that's still the version of femininity. Recent events have shown that some people have. And we are going to have a very visceral reaction to that, because we know that that's not true. But it's about reframing femininity to what you're saying, of letting them, of having your approach. The thing about femininity is it's your approach to things. You can still be a successful businesswoman in your feminine energy. It's how you approach it is different. Mm-hmm. You can be in a successful relationship with a billionaire and have $0 to your name and not get a cent from that and be happy if you approach it in the right way. But a lot of people view as like feminine men, like they have to be a certain standard of woman, or they are they're bankrolling your life, and like some girls want that, other girls don't, like, but it's, and both are okay, but it's how you approach it, and also recognizing that like everybody's path looks different. And
Yeah.
I think that's been the biggest challenge for most women in society in like recent years, with wanting to
Mm-hmm.
be feminine, because now it's part of the conversation, um, which I think is why something like quietly becoming is needed. And I definitely not with you personally because I knew you, but like if I would have just started following that account, not knowing who was behind it, I would have definitely been like, this is a little like weird, like this is like a little woo woo for me. But knowing who you are and
Yeah.
your story, and now also tapping into that conversation for myself, I'm like, no, there's a lot of value here, and like I don't have to do it exactly the way Lauren's saying to do it. I have to take that approach and find my version of it. But I think it's really easy to
Yeah.
look at someone's like routines or morning routine, for example, and be like, oh, I have to do that. And if it doesn't work for me, like I can't have a morning routine because like I'm not gonna be successful because I can't do it the way she does it. It's like, no, it's not how that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah, I will say I trial and errored multiple morning routines. Like I had an hour-long morning routine, and my morning routine is not structured. Like I don't do it a certain way. So you absolutely need to figure out how it works. It's taking the principle of how do I enjoy my day, and then taking the action from there. Doing what is feeling so good for you and makes you enjoy your life. Because everyone's different and everyone has differing. That's the other thing. You do not have to have the same amount of femininity as someone else. Like everyone has varying levels of masculine and feminine energy in their life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really good point. I think I really struggle with that too. Like I look at you and like again, before I knew you really, like I looked at you and I was like, I don't want those things that she has. Like, but does that mean that that's what I think that's why I asked my friends, like, am I masculine?
Yeah.
Like I really think that's part of it. Like you and other feminine women, like and I'm like, I'm not I'm not a dress girl. I'm not, like I'm not whatever, X enter X here thing. And so I
Yeah.
was like, is that what femininity means? But I like slow mornings, and I like, you know, I want to be a mom. I want to be, I'm not Betty Crocker. I'm not just like I want to have someone to come home to, and like I don't want them to come home to me and I just be there waiting with a whole meal. That's not my version of it. I want to come home and prepare a meal with him or for him on occasion, and come home and him have done the same for me. Like that kind of like, yeah, it looks different for everyone, but I realized that like I'm again, like I put these like walls up and like these like, that's what this is, so I can't have that, or I don't want that because I don't want this. And like I created a really small world for myself, and it's been about
Mm-hmm.
on tearing those walls on and unlocking it. And I think, yeah, everybody has to go through that on their own, but it's really scary and really hard to. Who are some of your role models then for your brand of femininity? I'll tell you mine, but I'm curious what yours are.
On my vision board right here, I have um Princess Diana for her philanthropy and for her uh I'm not even gonna say grace, but just like the way she connected with people. I have Margot Robbie because of just her as an actress. I feel like she plays the kind of feminine woman that I like, where she's like Harlequin. She's like super, extremely sensual and sexual, but like would cut a guy's head off.
That's
But
my
then like,
queen.
thank you,
I love her.
love her. And then I have Audrey.
Hepburn.
Why am I blanking on the name? Breakfast at Tiffany.
Yeah, Audrey Hepburn.
Oh my god, Audrey Hepburn. I keep thinking Audrey Plaza. Also love Audrey Plaza's humor, but Audrey Hepburn for her philanthropy and for her just the way she presents herself on screen, the way she's kind of like coy and playful. I really like a lot of the roles that she plays. Um, so those are kind of like three people, but I will also say like, so Margot Robbie's I guess more modern. There's a woman named Gabrielle Conizelli. I'm actually probably butchering her last name, but she doesn't even talk about. She's a model. She's
Yes,
she's
I know who you're
French. Her
talking about.
husband's Italian.
Yes, I know who you're talking about.
Their wedding video makes me cry every
I
single
haven't seen the
time.
video, but I can see you guys like I can see it.
It like makes me want to cry. Like their vows to each other are so, like I'm actually gonna cry thinking about it. Are so beautiful. Just the way she is runs a business. She's a mom of two who had PCOS. She's just so sweet on social media. And the support that she has for her boyfriend or for her husband, the way that she mothers her two, like she just seems like she has the most, I don't know her at all. She just seems like she has the most beautiful soul. So she has nothing to do with femininity. But she's just, I'd say she's my number one. If I was going to follow one person on Instagram, it would probably be her.
That's a good one. No, I know who you're talking about. I follow her too. Um, I think Margot Robbie for sure is one of mine.
Yeah.
I think Blake Lively for the same similar reason. Like it could be either one for me. Like sensual, sexual, coy, knows how to, play a guy, but also does it in a good, in like a nice way. But she also like the charisma. She's kind. She's sweet. She also
Yeah.
like again archetype of a female body that is more in line with me. Like I can't go and say that I'm gonna look like Audrey Hepburn. Like there's literally no way in hell that I'm ever gonna emulate that look. No
Yeah.
shot in hell. But I can look like a Mark Robbie or Blake Lively, in some ways,
Yeah.
obviously. Like I can emulate that a lot easier. I would say for me, if I'm gonna pick someone like influencer sphere, for me, Lauren Ireland, the co-founder of Summer Fridays, for similar reasons to Gabrielle.
Cool.
She's a businesswoman. She's married, 3 kids now. She just had her third. And I feel like you would really enjoy her content. I'm just gonna put that out there. Lauren Ireland.
I've actually never even heard
She's like
write her name down.
trying to think who else. I don't know. Like I feel like growing up I always said like J-Lo and Shakira, but their relationships with men is not my vibes. But like I'm trying to think of like a Latin woman. Penelope Cruz and Salma Hayek,
Yeah.
like married to successful billionaires, very sensual, like very feminine, but really like they're powerhouses in their own right, and they have a lot. Like that's my brand of femininity is powerhouse businesswoman, but very sensual. Amal Clooney always has been like inspiration for me. Like that's my brand, which are very different from yours, which makes sense. That's what we've been talking about. But I'm trying to think of someone like Lauren Ireland for sure is like more my softer side. I think Princess Diana, I think and like Kate Middleton, like that will always have like some level of appeal to me too. Like for sure, like the philanthropy, the grace, the helping people. My goal has always been, and I want to ask you this, like, what's your purpose in life? Like, what drives you in life? And I think you touched on this already, but like for me, I've always wanted to make an impact on my community and in my life. I leave a legacy while making an income. Like I want to be a businesswoman. I want to be successful. I want to have my own money and I want to have properties under my own names. And like there's a lot of things I want to do in the business world and like that are traditionally more male dominated because I like that stuff. I've always liked business and like I want to talk politics and history and like culture and like all these fun things like that. I enjoy that. But I also want to be like this sensual, like, femme fatale, like, more like goddess version of myself. And like finding a partner to our point, like finding a partner who's comfortable enough in himself that he likes both and like can handle both.
Yeah.
Is really, really hard. So that's why I'm like with your point, finding someone who is in that, like, give us the secrets.
What you just said about wanting this is what I was trying to think of earlier. Because in my brain, my idea of like a divine feminine woman is a woman who's extremely competent, like can figure stuff out by herself. He's asked like, "Hey, can you figure this out?" And she's like, "Yeah, I got it." Like, she's not helpless. She is extremely passionate about life and pursues things that show how passionate she is. Um, and she is well educated and is able to hold extremely cultural, educated conversations. But the way that she does this in a feminine way is she doesn't need to continually prove how smart she is in these conversations in order to be taken seriously. She just is able to contribute to the conversations because it's stuff that she's passionate about, but not in a way to prove how smart she is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that means she doesn't contribute to a conversation because she can feel that like these men are so wrong, she needs to prove them wrong, and like she knows that
That's my
the way
issue.
she's gonna say it.
That I feel I have to prove
Yeah.
myself wrong to people.
Me too. Honestly, me too.
I mean, in this conversation, I come across very much more aggressive than you do. Like, I wouldn't think that you are that way at all. But I agree. I think to your point, like that's.
I disagree with you.
Again, I think my perception of myself is really, really skewed, and I also talk way too fucking much. but 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 no, I love that. I completely agree with that definition. I would say, as you were saying that, my ex described me as Wonder Woman. And like I was like, if you could be any superhero, I don't know, like very early on, he was like, I see you as Wonder Woman. And she comes from, you know, she's the queen of the Amazons or whatever the heck she is. You know, and the Amazons, there's no men on the island, and they're warriors, they're female warriors. That's what, you know, and there are these goddesses, and Gal Gadot is stunning, but she and in her human persona, I forget her actual name, like the character's name, her human name, I guess. But you know, she's works with men. She's very competent. Like, spy thrillers have always really intrigued me too. Like, you know, not the Bond women, but like I wish there was a female version of James Bond. Like, that always really appealed to me. Like, though I don't know if you've read The Woman in Red, but it's about like women socialites being spies during World War II because they were in the rooms with all the richest, most powerful men, but because they're a beautiful woman dressed in a ball gown with a cocktail in her hand, no one thinks that she's listening, and that she's
that duality. I love the duality.
I want to read it so bad. Maybe we can read it together. But
there's another book like that, Codename Helene, that's really good. But I feel like Woman in Red sounds really much more interesting. Codename Helene.
Say the name of the book?
Codename Helene.
I feel like I've heard of that somewhere, but yeah, it's similar. Like, it's just the duality of women. Like, I feel like that to me is what being a feminine woman is the duality of women. And
yes,
finding that finding that duality and finding someone who is secure in themselves to be with someone who's in that duality is really interesting. Also, like, to go more pop culture, you need to watch it, The Idea of You. I think that's why that book resonated so much. Anne Hathaway is another person that I think of, like, model person to look up to, like, and why she gravitated toward this project was the premise is she's 40 and he's 20, and you know, she's single, divorcee, she has a kid, a teenager. She's not supposed to go for a guy who's half her age, but also like, she's not supposed to be this sensual woman. Like, she's supposed to be frumpy because she's a mom, and she's like, and she like rediscovers her femininity, and that she can be this, like, she could have needs and want them to be met, and want a young hot guy to, like, who says she can't have that just because she's been married and has a kid? Like, why does society put us on a shelf after 30? I'm 40 now. Like, why can't I be that? And so it's her self-discovery. And what alights that discovery is a Harry Styles-esque boy band guy who's half her age.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always been attracted to older women, and like it also dives into like why is he attracted to older women. It's that culture, that competency. Like he wants women who bring something to the table, not just a 20-year-old girl who is still figuring herself out. There's nothing wrong with that, but like he's attracted to more of that sophisticated woman, so that's why he goes for older women, so that they're both like in love with the idea of each other, but they don't actually like each other.
Mm-hmm.
But they help each other figure out who they really are and what they really want. So that's why that book is like why she chose it to make it a movie. And the book is definitely way better than the movie, but the movie is fun.
Okay.
But I like this tail end of the conversation, like the duality of women. To close out, what is your favorite lesson about femininity that you have discovered about yourself, and if it's different, the one that you love to teach the most?
My favorite lesson about femininity that I've learned is probably honestly what we just talked about, that it doesn't put you in this box of being soft and like being walked over, that it really, really, really is actually a very powerful thing to adopt feminine energy, because you're so tapped into your intuition. You are so tapped into how things make you feel. And from that place, you are able to attract things or remove things from your life that don't enhance your life. And so as a result, your life becomes so amazing because you have these boundaries of how you are willing, of how you protect yourself, essentially. And that is actually very, 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 very powerful to be feminine. And my favorite lesson to teach regarding feminine energy is kind of the same, but especially in relationships, because that's what my coaching is really all about. The end goal of the coaching, at least, is that when you embrace being more dominantly feminine in your relationship with a more dominantly masculine man, you guys are able to inspire each other in a way where both of you feel heard and feel needed by the other person, because you are actively choosing to be together, not because you need each other to feel validated. Because he's doing the things that make him feel powerful and safe for you, and she's doing the things that make her feel receptive and safe with him. And she's able to be very discerning. And so when you enter your feminine energy in a relationship, you're just like suddenly things get easier and harder depending on how you want to look at it, but like you're able to have conversations that you need to have. You start getting what you want from your relationship because you're willing to ask for what you want. It's just so powerful to step in your feminine energy when you're in your relationship. Like everything changes.
I love what you just said, because it's funny, the last week and a half of my relationship, it was right after I had seen you, like the month after we saw you at the beach. And it was right when you were starting, I think, quietly becoming, this was like mid-February. So this was right when you started really talking more about it. And I think I saw something about that on your page, or like maybe you and I talked about it or something. I don't know. But I remember I had stopped saying what I needed because I just felt like I was talking to a brick wall. Like I just wasn't, like, it wasn't working, but like I wasn't doing anything about it because I didn't really know how. I was like, is this kind of like what I'm like, I signed up for? Like, you know, I like, it's such a good life. Like, how can I complain about this? Blah, blah, blah. And then I realized, like, my needs aren't being met. Like, I'm going to speak up, because in my life, like with every other relationship, I just magically expected other people to meet my needs, but I realized I was never vocalizing them properly. I just hoped everybody would know because I was crying for help.
Yeah.
I realized if I don't say it, no one's gonna know. I can't expect other people to come save me if I'm not willing to save myself first. And so to your point, like I remember asking for my needs to be met. And like literally it was, my love language is words of affirmation and quality time. And his are physical touch and quality time. I do not like being touched unless I'm comfortable with you or I feel called to do it. Like, I will initiate it. Or I'll tell you, yes,
Yeah.
you can touch me, or like, can you hug me, or can you? But I never asked for it
Yeah.
because
Mm-hmm.
I don't really like it. I never felt comfortable to ask for it. Like, and my parents are not huggers. So, like, mind you, I grew up just not being in a house where even though I physical touch is like my third love language, and I if I feel comfortable with you, I'm a koala. You can ask my college
Yeah.
guys, fucking koala. But them and they've known me since I was 17, and like I would walk into their room and like someone just broke my heart, and they're like, what's wrong? And they would like burrito me and be like, all right, let's talk, let's go get food, let's go get dinner, let's watch a movie. Like, they would comfort me. They treated me so well. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a hard thing, it's a hard bar to meet, which is also why I think like I already
Yeah.
know who I'm gonna end up with. It's one of them. And they've
I'm sure they're all listening to me like, who is it?
they've told me, some of them have told me that they think it is one of them. They don't know who. No one knows who it is. Well,
It's like reality TV.
one of them wants it to be a certain person, but I don't know. Anyway, so basically, I remember being like, you want me to be affectionate with you and like touch you, but I don't feel comfortable with you right now. Like, you're not,
Mm-hmm.
like, what happened to you look pretty, or you like, like, just compliment me, like, show me you care. Like, I literally would, we were just going through the motions of being in a relationship at the end. And it's like, why are we still here? Why are
For
we here?
4 months. You guys only dated for 4 months.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It was too early for this to all start happening. It was the last month. Like, since I saw you at the beach, that was the beginning of the decline. Everything was fine before that. I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
happened that weekend, but just things just quickly, like, the train went off the tracks real fast. And I just was like trying so hard to hold on to how it used to be. I was really not really ready to notice that, like, it had changed. And that
Yeah.
weekend, in like a month later, I was like I just can't keep doing this. Like, I need you to, like, he's like, that's just not how I am. Like, I'm not a complimentary person. I'm like, but you were at the beginning, so what changed? And I think ultimately it was that the vision in his head for who he wanted his partner to be is not me. And like, it was just
Yeah.
I can go on. Like, we could dissect this a lot more, but like,
We could talk for another 2 hours.
we could talk about this for hours. But I think, to your point, yeah, like, the woman has to be safe enough and willing and open enough to be receptive to someone being there for her. But I think where I struggle is the reverse of like what she has to be for him in order to feel comfortable doing that for her. So my last question for you is, if, let's say, like, I mean, this was a coaching session. We'll just say that this is essentially my point. But like, if you have one piece of advice for me, like, as I hopefully approach entering my next relationship, coming from a place of in my feminine energy and being a lot more receptive, like, what's one piece of advice you have for me coming out of this place that I have been in the past?
I would stop. I don't want to say stop. I would be mindful of when you are comparing how he's taking care of you to how well you take care of you. And I want to I want to supplement that with saying the way he takes care of you should exceed the way you take care of yourself. Absolutely. Otherwise, what's the point of being with him? But if there's ever a moment where you would do something differently, like you would take a different route to go to the restaurant or something, it's not always your way or the highway. And if there's ever an instance where like you like I said, you would do something differently, having that conversation with him is not because you're right and he's wrong. It's trying to understand why he made that decision the way he did, and then communicating how it makes you feel for him to do it the way that you would like him to do it.
That's a good one.
because it's going to happen where he doesn't do things the way you want him to do. Like it happens in my relationship. He doesn't do things the way I want him to do them all the time. I don't do things that he'd want me to do all the time. But it's not because we're trying to fail each other or because I mean, your biggest thing is needing control.
Yeah.
So, and I know that you're in your next relationship. I know for a fact that you are going to work so hard to try to be feminine, but being feminine is not something that you have to work hard for.
Yeah.
It's just
how do
a
you
state.
recommend I show up in my feminine energy, not like organically? Like,
It's a lot of questions that you have to ask yourself because that is completely subjective to you.
okay.
But I would ask yourself that. What does it look like for me to show up in my feminine energy in this relationship based off of what my definition of feminine energy is? Now, when you ask yourself that, you need to make sure that your definition of feminine energy is focused on your feeling. How are you feeling? Constantly, how are you feeling? So what does it look like for me to feel like I'm able to trust this person? What conversations need to be had? What does it feel like for me to be able to be led by this person? What does it look like for me to feel like I'm getting what I need from this relationship out of this person? Like to feel like I'm being praised, to feel like I'm getting enough time with this person. It is always a constant assessment of how you are feeling. And if you're ever having a conversation about what you want from him, it's always, this makes me feel X way. This will make me feel X way if you do this. This makes me feel X way when you don't do this. And communicating from a place of like, this is something that I would do for myself. This is something that I want for my partner. And how can we work together so like I can feel like this with you?
Those are good. You should make a workbook.
It's all inside of Quietly Becoming. It's all there.
I know, but I'm saying like because you're like these are things I have to ask myself like to journal about. It's like you should make like a journal or like a workbook to complement the videos and
like prompts
and prompts. Yeah, like I again, business brain always going. But no that but no it's true. Like it's something that like you asked me that offline and like I touched on it a little bit. You said, what do you think the purpose of your next relationship is? Or like entering your next relationship, what do you think the purpose of it is? And I think it's that now that we've had this conversation for literally 2.5 hours is showing up in my feminine energy without having to try to be in my feminine energy and feeling fulfilled and accomplished and safe and happy in a relationship and in my business and overall in my life. And I think again, that's why I ended things. Like I knew that wasn't going to be the right relationship. And again, I think there is people in my life and they know this. I've talked. It's not like they don't know. They don't listen, but if they were, they would know who I'm talking about. Like they know who they are. Like my friends and like my that get people in my life that I think could be more like they know that like the reason they're still in my life and the reason they are in my life for the purpose that they're in is because I do feel like I can be myself with them in a way that I don't think I can be with others because they have seen every single iteration of me to get to this place. Where do you see Quietly Becoming going in the next year? Where do you see your journey with femininity going in the next year?
I see Quietly Becoming continuing to expand. I see retreats happening. I see more events happening, like more in-person events happening. For my femininity journey, I don't really know. It's not, because again, it's not really about achieving anything. It's just continually focusing on feeling the way that I want to feel, which I know that sounds so simple and so cliche. That is actually how simple.
That simple. It is simple.
Yeah, it really, really is that simple. And sometimes for me, I get so caught up in how I'm like, I want to feel this way right now. A huge part is also I need to feel uncomfortable now. Like, it's not always going to feel good. sometimes taking feminine action and like feeling good for yourself means feeling uncomfortable now to feel good later. Like, I think for me, understanding that more and more is going to be a huge part of it. So yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah. Where can everyone find you and work with you?
My Instagram, my TikTok, and my YouTube are all Lauren O. Hunter. Links are in my bio to join the Quietly Becoming community. And I'm also, this is new. I am also in the process of opening up my calendar for one-on-one coaching, whether it's 4 sessions or 8 sessions. So that's coming soon. If anyone's interested in that, you can DM me. But yeah, that's all my socials.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Of course, I'm so glad this happened.
Me too. We're going to keep talking, but thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll talk to you all next week.